Thanks, Barbara. More on the governor's battle with unions, the latest on the mayor's race, and the latest troubles for that jet-setting congressman from Peoria. Joining us today, Chicago Defender columnist Monroe Anderson, Diana Rickard, Vice President of Communications for the Illinois Policy Institute, and Sheila Morgan, President and CEO of the Chicago Minority Supplier Development Council. And welcome to everybody.
Thank you.
So we heard the woman, Monroe, in Barbara's story there saying she feels that all state employees have a bullseye on their backs. Is she right?
Yes, and also all unions in the state of Illinois. Governor Rauner is out to kill the unions. It's a Republican strategy that we see playing out from coast to coast. And when Republicans get in power in states, they go after the unions. The reason they go after the unions is not simply because unions destroy jobs, as they sometimes claim. The unions contribute to Democrats. The unions have workers who go out and campaign for Democrats. That's the last amount of protection that the Democratic Party has, with the corporations being, of course, on the side of the Republicans.
Diana, do you agree that Governor Rauner is trying to demonize state workers?
I don't think he's trying to demonize state workers, and I think it's really important to make a distinction between government unions and rank and file workers. They're not always one and the same. It's important to understand also what Governor Rauner's executive order would actually do. It doesn't take away any rights from any government workers. If you like your union, you can keep it. You can still be a member. You can still pay $600, $700, $800 a year in dues.
You're talking about the fair share provisions.
Yes, which Anders Lindahl in this clip and AFSCME are very upset about. But if you decide, hey, being in a union is not a good fit for me, we're not a one-size-fits-all society, and I would rather not be covered by this contract, I would rather work directly with my manager, then now you would have the power to say that. Under the current situation in the status quo, you have to pay money to a union to keep your job. You would lose your job if you don't pay money to the union. We would allow people to choose for themselves, is the union a good fit or not? And I think choice is a good thing.
Governor Rauner and his supporters are casting this as a matter of free speech. That is, this executive order, which would eliminate the fair share provision for non-union employees. Is it about free speech?
I don't think it is. I really don't. I think now people can decide really what they want to do. And at the end of the day, it's really the people that can decide what they want to do. They do have a choice. Unions really are very critical to the success of the worker. And so I am not in agreement at all with Governor Rauner's position. I think that so many people have been able to succeed because of the union. Right. And even if you choose not to be a part of the union, you benefit from, from the negotiations that the union makes. So I'm not in agreement with that.
Well, the idea there is that the fair share, even if you're not a union employee, you benefit because that money goes toward negotiating a contract that may benefit you.
That's how I feel.
There's always the possibility that somebody would say, I have nothing against the union, but it just isn't a fit for me. And I think if you do fall into that category, you should have the ability to say, I don't want to be a part of this group. And sometimes we see in workplaces, in the past few years, a lot of people work from home. Say you're a new mom, you might have a more flexible schedule. Union contracts often won't allow for that. You have to be in at this time, you have to be out at this time, and the work rules are very rigid. And so there might be somebody who works for state government and says, right now that's not a fit for me. And I think it's a good thing for them to have the ability to make that decision. Who do I want to support, and does this contract really benefit me or not?
Yeah, you're talking about a minority of minority in that situation.
Right. But a union should represent everybody.
Yeah, they should represent everybody, and because I benefit from their representation, then it's like being in a club or something like that. Whether you show up, if you're in a health club, it doesn't matter whether you show up once a month or never, whatever. If you're in the club, you have to pay the dues. Part of the problem with this is that the corporations back the Republicans. And if I work for the Koch brothers, the Koch brothers
You're talking
industry.
about the conservative donors.
Yeah,
to Republican
exactly.
causes, yes.
Then I may not agree with their politics, but as an employee, I still have to go along with the program. Right. So I don't. It's a disadvantage for unions to not be able to collect the dues that they get, but corporations can do whatever they please.
What about the bigger picture here? Karen Lewis, the president of the Chicago Teachers Union, has called Governor Rauner Scott Walker on steroids, referring to
yes.
the Wisconsin governor who's
right.
now running for president. Is it clear that Rauner is just out to gut employee unions, as far as you're concerned?
You know what, Chris, I'm not prepared to say that that's what he's doing. I think Governor Rauner really wants to make a difference, and he says this state has some problems, and clearly the pensions are a part of the problem. The unions drive the pension, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not the solution. You know, we really have to look at what the right solution is. And to the point that was made earlier, I think unions are designed to negotiate what the employees want. So if we want to negotiate staying at home and working from home, it's more likely that that will happen if you have someone collectively speaking for you. We pick people off one by one. Your target, I got a target on your back, I got a target on everybody's back. It's more impactful when we stand as a group.
We've heard a lot about cuts and budget cuts affecting the unions. Haven't heard much about revenue, raising more money for the state. The Speaker of the State House, Mike Madigan, has resurrected the idea of a tax on millionaires, a 3% surcharge imposed by Illinois. It was overwhelmingly supported in the November election by the voters. And Diana, do you think it's a good solution?
No, it's not. And the reason is because it's twofold. First of all, the millionaires tax, as Madigan will call it, would predominantly affect small businesses, people who have a small family business, maybe only a few employees, and they file their income taxes on their personal income. So we're not attacking, you know, the North Shore per se. You're hitting small business owners. But the second reason that it won't solve the problem is because Illinois has never had more money than it has today, and yet it still can't balance the books. Why is that? We have this overspending problem. In 2010, we had $27 billion in state coffers. Today, we have more than 36, and we're still overspending. It's because we need to start spending our money smarter. You could give politicians in Springfield all the money in the world, and it would never be enough.
We have to go from Monroe, I'm going to get you next, but we have to go from one big battleground to another, and that is the mayor's race. We woke up to find ourselves in a real election campaign now with Chuy Garcia and Emanuel. And just this past week, Monroe, we had the Republican Senator, Mark Kirk, saying that if Emanuel is not elected mayor, watch out, Chicago is going to be another Detroit. What kind of a scare tactic is that, and do you think it's
you know, well, first of all, I mean, it reminds me of when Harold Washington was running for mayor back in the 80s, and at that time, Chicago was supposed to become another Gary, Indiana. You know, it's Chicago is too big, too diverse, its industries to just fall down. Detroit is a one-industry town. Chicago is not, so that's not going to happen. I think Mr. Garcia knows enough about business to run the city well. We just got downgraded. We're two downgrades away from junk bonds right now.
The city debt was downgraded.
The city, yes, exactly. So to argue that Mayor Emanuel can run the city properly when he's been in for 4 years and we've been downgraded doesn't seem to be a great argument.
At the same time, we now have some clarity in the race. It's down to 2 candidates instead of Emanuel against a host of candidates. And Garcia is getting some more scrutiny for some of his expensive promises, for example, to hire 1,000 new police officers. Do you think that these sorts of specifics are going to be harder for Garcia to handle?
Absolutely, and I think a lot of people are unclear what his platform is. It seems like there was a lot of anti-Rahm momentum. And look, nobody is saying that Emanuel has done a great job. Our city is still suffering. We've got 14% black unemployment in Chicago. That's a tragedy. But now is the time for the 2 candidates to really lay out their agenda and speak very clearly this is what I will do, and this is what I don't stand for, and get rid of all the vagaries.
I'm in complete agreement with that. In fact, I think Chewy has had to really focus now. You know, I think in the past, when they were campaigning, there were 5 of them. He wasn't as specific. Now we need specifics. What are you going to do? How are you going to solve the problems? You're going to hire 1,000 more policemen. How are you going to do that? How are you going to pay for it?
Right.
Give us some facts.
Exactly.
Give us some facts.
And Mayor Rauner is going to have to get off the talking points.
Right.
Because that's what he's done. I mean, he's had these talking points, so whenever he was interviewed by anybody, he would automatically, he was very disciplined about that, using a talking point.
And now Mayor Emanuel, just in the last few days, is going on a charm offensive. He's got a brand new commercial which acknowledges that he has a personality problem. Let's hear a little bit of that commercial.
They say your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. I'm living proof of that. I can rub people the wrong way or talk when I should listen. I own that. But I'm driven to make a difference. When politics stood in the way
What about that commercial? He says he's rubbing people the wrong way, but it's for the right reasons. You buy that, Monroe?
Yeah. What he's saying is, I'm a jerk, but I'm your jerk. And the problem with that is that job one with a politician is to be likable. I mean, this is, the most popular person in high school becomes the class president, not the guy that nobody wants to go out and eat lunch with. So he has to work on that, and I'm not sure that it's in his DNA to do it.
Diana, did that commercial convince you?
No, but I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in the room when the political consultant said, "This is your next commercial. This is what you need."
And what do you think the reason behind that? Why did he even have to make that commercial?
You know what? I like Mayor Emanuel. And I'm not prepared to endorse him, but I like him.
Yeah.
He can be abrasive. He has done some good things for the city. I like him. He did it because he's been abrasive, and he doesn't come across as the kind of guy that's very approachable. So he knows that. He recognizes that, and he wants people to like him so they'll vote for him. But it's going to take more than that commercial to say, I'm really on your team.
Right. For example, I heard a story last week. A woman was at a restaurant on Halstead Street in the 43rd Ward in Lincoln Park, and she was having dinner there. He came there to have dinner. He walked from the front of the restaurant to the back of the restaurant where his table was, without stopping to speak to anyone, waving, acknowledging anyone. He just went there. Any politician that knows anything knows that you have to just sort of acknowledge people along the way because you may need them in the future. In fact, Mayor Richard J. Daley's talent was that when he talked to you, you felt as if there was no one else he was talking to, that he was so focused on you that there was no one else in the room. And this is one of the reasons he was beloved.
Well, let me say, though, now, when you talk to Mayor Emanuel, he does give you that feeling. When he is in your space, he is really in your space.
Okay.
But that kind of coaching, I would say that whomever is handling him should have really coached him a little better than that. That no politician should ever do that.
Right.
We have another big political story in Illinois, down south in Peoria, and we have to wonder how it's playing there, and that is the Congressman Aaron Schock, who's been something of a national punchline. Jon Stewart has made fun of him, along with other politicians, for his exploits on Instagram and going all over the world. And now, fairly serious charge that he used taxpayer money to get a private plane ride to see a Bears game. And then the day after that story broke in the Chicago papers, he repays
$1,000.
Right. But is this one of those stories where it just keeps piling on? I mean, it started with the Downton Abbey decoration of his office, and every week there's something new.
Yeah.
Well, the way this works as a general rule is once you've been exposed to have a bad habit of some sort, then journalists start looking to see what other bad habits you have or how your behavior fits into this pattern. So now they're going to just be looking for everything, and every time he makes a mistake, it will be put into that category some kind of way. He's in a bad situation.
What can he do to revive his reputation, do you think, as a Republican?
Well, he's definitely got to stop spending taxpayer money inappropriately. That would be the first thing. But I think he's really got to come clean with the voters and say, I made a mistake, this is wrong, I'm not going to do it again. And, ensure to them that he's not going to be wasting their money. Goodness knows Washington has its own budget crisis, and in Illinois you're not going to get sympathy from anybody about spending taxpayer money inappropriately. So I think he's really got to start being a better steward of taxpayer dollars.
What about his defense? He's quoting Taylor Swift saying, haters gonna hate. Is that gonna work?
That's not going to work. That's not going to work at all. And I also don't think I'm going to investigate myself is going to work either.
Right.
I think if you really want an investigation, it needs to be someone that's independent, not someone that you hire to come and say, and look and tell me how good I am. So when you have an audit, right, it's an independent auditor, so I don't believe that's going to work for him either.
Ideally, the people we have in Congress don't need somebody to police them.
Right.
They're principled, they're good stewards of
Sure.
taxpayer money, so
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a degree of soul searching that might need to go on.
At the same time, we do have a Congressman, Monroe, a former congressman who is in a federal prison right now because he used not tax money but campaign money for inappropriate purposes. So this is not necessarily a lighthearted affair.
No,
That's right.
exactly.
It's not. It's very serious.
Yeah, and in fact, campaign money is more excusable than taxpayer money, I think. And I think maybe what we should be saying about the congressman is a taker's got to take.
And as John Stewart said, the investigator's going to investigate. On that note, we have to wrap it up. Thanks so much to our guests, Monroe Anderson, Diana Rickard, and Sheila Morgan.